Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and I just got back from the new film Man of Steel. It's the reboot of Superman. It's kind of doing a origin story slash villain type thing with General Zod, played by Michael Shannon. Superman this time around is played by Henry Cavill, who is trying to learn how to use his powers and fight for the right of humanity, and then General Zod comes to town to destroy Earth and make it like Krypton, and Superman's there to stop him and stop this evil villain. This film is directed by Zack Snyder. I think the thing about this movie and with Zack Snyder is kind of dumb. He prefers explosions or style over substance or character development or romance. He's not really into that. Rebooting Superman, doing an origin story, people are like, that's boring, we've seen that before, we've seen that in another movie. As someone who grew up with comic books and has seen several Superman shows and everything, I mean, it is boring, but there's a reason for it. And if you look at most superhero movies, the reason you do a long stretch of time before they have powers, you kind of learn and know them as people, so that when they do have their powers, it kind of makes sense for them as a character. It doesn't just make sense for what the plot should do or what the story feels like should happen. You have an actual attachment to them as well. So it drives like a greater drama, having that part where you learn about them as a character and learn about how they grew up. When you're doing an origin story, what you're doing is you're building a connection with the character. That's why that first Iron Man was so successful. It's because the audience had a connection with Tony Stark. They had a connection with that character, and then he became Iron Man. And so they had this connection with the superhero. And what the original Superman the movie does very well is it has this long period where we're learning about Clark Kent. We're learning about his time in Kansas before he ever becomes Superman. And what this film does in the first act is it rushes through the Gisriel stuff, so there's no real impact of it. Whereas in the original 78 film, you have all this time with Marlon Brando. I felt like I really got that Gisriel. Whereas this Gisriel, it's very much trying to thrill me. You get the Zod sequence so quickly, you barely get enough time to process exactly what's going on. And then you get Krypton falling apart, and you get all this stuff happening. It's very exciting, and there's lots of explosions, but you're not getting the connection to the Gisriel character. And then when you leave that in the first act, you're kind of half doing what's going on with Clark and building the mystery and having the first act that sets up all the stuff with Zod coming to Earth and such, and with learning about Clark's upbringing. And it's kind of perplexing that they would do both those things in one act at the same time. It would be far more important to just focus on how all this happened, because there's like a really important dramatic points in a lot of the things we learn about his past that would help build a stronger character and have it mean more. It's like when we learn everything about his childhood, I understand that character more, but I couldn't understand that character because I didn't know that, and it just wanted to have action sequences. That was more important. It's like shoving this film into a structure that this story doesn't work with. When you watch Superman, the movie from 1978, you learn who Clark is, so when he becomes Superman, it really means something to you. You know who Clark is, you know this character. And granted, I think that Superman film, the 78 film, is very clunky and it has problems with it, but through that clunkiness, it has reasons for being so clunky. It does feel like two movies because you develop him and then you get to Lex Luthor, but it's interesting that this film felt like it knew how to flow better, but it knew far less about character. You get somebody to care about a character regardless of them being a superhero or not. And the fact that this film, I don't think, succeeds in that whatsoever, because all the characters are developed in such bizarre ways to just kind of have them, it's more dictated on they have to get to these certain action points and less dictated on character and understanding this character and building a relationship with the audience. Some of the action sequences and some of the thrills were better than I've seen from anything else this year. It makes really great use of its budget, and you can see a lot, like the Krypton sequences are amazing visually. A lot of the visual effects are really cool, but it's like that's kind of all there is. It's trying to act like there's a lot more there, but there really isn't a lot more there. It kind of builds Superman. I do think it focuses on trying to build Superman, but like Lois and Zod's kind of built sort of somewhat. I don't think Zack Snyder, well, I think he's an idiot, but I don't think he sat down and watched Superman movies and thought, well, what's the theory behind how all this works? I think he went, you know what's cool? Explosions, and not so much with these people talking. And so you get kind of an emptier movie, and you get a movie that it's gonna wow the fanboys. If you like Superman, hey, you're gonna have a fun time. But it's not the kind of superhero movie that's going to establish a brand the way Iron Man did so successfully for Marvel. This Man of Steel is kind of like getting the surface quality of a lot of those better movies, but not really understanding the soul of it and not understanding the charm. I don't think Henry Cavill has the charm and the wit and the grace. I don't really want to see him in anything that's not a Superman movie. He's not the kind of actor who you can build a relationship with. I like Amy Adams as Lois Lane quite a bit. I think she's like perfectly cast. And I actually like Michael Shannon. I think his character is kind of a bit confused in development and such. I was a little confused about, there's a character who basically looks like Ursa from Superman 2, but I looked it up and Ursa is actually based on this character. The character of Fiora in this film, she is who Ursa is actually based on. Ursa was someone made up for Superman 2. So Fiora is from the comic books, and it makes more sense she's in there. That's fine, in case you're wondering who that was. I actually thought she was well cast as like kind of an Ursa replacement, but she's playing a different character, but not really. They had a good cast. It's just the direction and the writing needed to be more concise and be closer to kind of how you build a drama and how you're connected to characters. It was too interested in wowing you. Now, I'm going to do a spoiler section, and I will go on in more detail about this. So if you haven't seen Man of Steel and you don't want it ruined for you, but ultimately, regardless of my feelings on this movie, or if you think it's a lame movie, just don't go past this part, because I don't want it spoiled, because I am going to talk about things that'll totally ruin the movie, and that would suck, so you don't want to do that. Spoilers ahoy. There's a major point in this movie that I think is a huge mistake, and it's a great scene, and it explains Clark, and it explains so much about his character and why he's kind of wandering on and why he's kind of lost. That scene with the tornado, which is an important character scene, and why it's so important is because it tells you so much about Clark and why he's kind of aimless at first before becoming Superman. They should have built it in a natural kind of progression, like a regular kind of origin story. And its kind of break from doing a regular kind of origin story kind of hurt it. And if we had gotten that scene, then you go to the oil tanker, that scene, the oil tanker, would make a lot of sense. It would ring more true. It would really say something about the character. Why hold that off until Clark meets Lois? I don't understand. And it's just a major problem dramatically with this movie, when you could have that early on and it would work. But with that being put in this weird ass place, it still kind of works because it's in the first act and it's right before Zod shows up. There's a reason Iron Man, Captain America, Spider-Man, or even Batman Begins are structured the way they are, is because when you get to the moment when they're the hero, it means something, because you can go on this journey with them. And if you're robbed of that journey or messed with it and trying to do it in this weird way, you know, have it go on at the same time as something else, you're not given the time. This film didn't give itself the time for us as an audience to go through something with it. It's doing the whole big third act thing. It does feel a little like they're doing a third act because they need to have a third act, which I always don't really like. When they take everybody to like the Phantom Zone or wherever they went, and then Zod's left, and him and Superman have that last little battle. It's almost like, when I watched that, I felt like, hey, what if when Star Wars ended, the original Star Wars, and they blew up the Death Star, and then Darth Vader flew back and started shooting up the Millennium Falcon? How terrible would that have been? Whereas, like, give us a traditional third act, because that didn't really work. Like, have that within your third act. Lois and Clark don't have much romance between them. They don't build the romance, really. The connection between them is so kind of fake. It's just like why does he like her again? Because she asks him a lot of questions. I don't really get it. Like, why not have them kind of flirt a little? They're together because they're Superman and Lois Lane. They're not together because we believed in some sort of love story between them. And I think it's good at wowing with its action sequences, and it's good at thrilling. Should have been written more like a story and less like a thrill ride. You need to put into perspective how important those opening first acts are. And it's like the second and third act are fine, you know, too much product placement. I really wanted to go to IHOP after this for some reason. But I also felt like Middle America does kind of have a lot of like corporate stores, so it's semi-realistic. It's a film that acts like it has a soul. It's like if a robot convinced you it had a soul and you kind of believed it. I think as a summer blockbuster it succeeds, but as a movie I don't think it succeeds as well as it does as a summer movie, and you know, that's kind of the problem with it. So if you have seen Man of Steel and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. I've done 3 Superman reviews also that were kind of leading up to this review, and those were Superman the movie from 1978, Superman 2, and the Fleischer Studios Superman cartoons. And those are all up right now for your viewing pleasure, and I hope you check them out. And that's it, and thanks for watching.